Today we're here to announce the latest reward by the FBI through the Metro Safe Streets Task Force in partnership with the Oregon Crimestoppers for yet another case of a homicide that should not have happened here in the city of Portland. On December 17, 2020, Kelly Smith and her husband Raymond Smith were working as Uber Eats drivers. They were in the area of Dawson Park, up by Legacy Emmanuel Hospital in North Portland, when unknown suspects began to fire at their vehicle, hitting Ms. Smith and killing her. We know from the investigation that several different types of ammunition were found at the scene of the crime. And we also know thus far that Ms. Smith was an unintended target. Unfortunately, her and her husband were at the wrong place at the wrong time, caught up in what was likely this continuing cycle of retaliatory violence that we see far too often here on the streets of Portland. Kelly was going about her business, working, trying to earn a living, and now her husband Raymond Smith is left to mourn an unfathomable loss. So again, for this case, we are now offering a $15,000 reward for anybody providing information that can lead to the arrest and or conviction of those responsible for Mrs. Smith's murder. So again, we're in front of the media asking for the same help on the 7th case so far that the Metro Safe Streets Task Force has put out rewards for. Again, we're here pleading, actually demanding the community to step forward and help us with all of these cases and so many others that remain unsolved and that continue to happen. Now, added to Raymond Smith's pain, the now widow of Mrs. Smith, is the pain of so many other families, but included the families that we see here before us today that have joined us. And they're also here not to plead anymore, not to ask nicely anymore for the community's assistance. They're here to demand that people out there that are listening now, that likely have information that have not come forward to the police, need to do so now. You've heard law enforcement leaders, civic leaders, business leaders, even elected officials say enough is enough when it comes to this gun violence that we continue to see. But for these people on these posters, for these family members, it's too late. It's actually too late for them. So when is it truly going to be enough for the rest of us, for the entire community, in one voice to say enough is enough and truly stand up and stop this cycle of violence that we continue to see here? With that, I'd like to invite some of these family members and friends that have joined us today for some of these cases to provide a few remarks. First is going to be the family of Michaela Harris. As you all remember, we've offered a reward of up to $25,000 for anyone providing information on the killing of 18-year-old Michaela Harris and the injury of 6 others that occurred on July 17, 2021. Investigators believe that Michaela was also an unintended target in a gang-related shooting. The shooters fired from a car in the street before it sped away, and it is known that there were many witnesses that ran off and have not provided information to law enforcement. So with that, I'd like to invite Michaela's Aunt Patricia and cousin Brianna to speak.
All I want for my cousin is justice. It's hard to know that she's not here because someone wants to be so stupid and not.
Bottom line, somebody out there knows something. Someone knows something. Look how many people were out there that day. But until it happens to one of their family members, they're not going to feel what we feel. They will feel what her mom and dad feel. Until it happens to one of their family members and they have to stand up here like we do and beg the community to step up. That one person, just say something. Say something before we have to go through another senseless killing. And a little girl who just graduated high school lost her life for something so senseless. For somebody else. It wasn't even for her, it was for somebody else. Not to say that they deserve this either, but our family is hurting. Her mom is hurting. And somebody knows something. Somebody needs to step up and say something to give her mom closure. So when she ends her day, she can say, I have a little bit of peace. That the person that took my daughter's life is not roaming the streets to take somebody else's life. This is ridiculous. Somebody knows something and somebody needs to say something.
Not only does my family need justice, but these families do too. If you know something, say something. We're hurting. It's pain. It's justice for Michaela and these other families that are here too.
Thank you, ladies. We have also offered a reward of up to $15,000 for information in the shooting death of 23-year-old Evelyn Navarro Barajas. As you recall, on June 18, 2020, Evelyn spent the afternoon at the river and then later at the night gathered with family and friends at a parking lot nearby here at the 6700 block of Northeast Killingsworth. Just before midnight, a vehicle stopped on the street near the parking lot. A suspect or suspects exited the vehicle and began firing at the group. Evelyn was shot and died later that next morning. A close friend of hers was shot and thankfully survived. But again, evidence suggests this was a gang-motivated shooting. However, there is nothing to say that those that were hit and injured had anything to do with this cycle of retaliatory violence. With that, I'd like to invite Evelyn's mom, Sonia, up to say a few words.
I am Evelyn's mom, and I'm here to ask for justice for my daughter. She was a really loving, caring person. It's really painful not to know why somebody would just come up and start shooting. I'm not gonna say my daughter, she was a 23-year-old kid having fun, living her life. She did not deserve to be killed like she did. I want justice for my child. I know the people that were there, I know they know something, but they just don't want to talk. Just come forward. Let us know what you know. Let the police know what you know, because I know, like, as a mom, I know that you guys know what happened to my child. You guys know who did this to my child. I want to find peace. It's never going to go away. I try to live with it day by day. I'll be okay one day, and maybe the next day it's hard. It's a pain that no mom deserves, to live like this, not knowing, having that person out there like nothing. He needs to pay what he did to my child.
Thank you, Sonia. We've also offered a reward of up to $15,000 for information in the shooting death of 37-year-old Anthony Mcdonald. On November 27, 2020, Mr. Mcdonald was shot near the intersection of Northwest Broadway and Northwest Glisson Street. Mcdonald was either inside or near a tent at the time and later died of his injuries at the hospital. We've also offered a reward of $15,000 for information in the Curtis D. Smith homicide. Curtis was 25 when he was found suffering from gunshot wounds in Farragut Park on February 25, 2021. He died at the scene and had been visiting the area to attend the funeral of a friend while he had resided in Fresno, California. Curtis's mother, Promise Marks, lives out of town and has asked us to provide the following written statement that she'd asked me to read. It says as follows: if you've never heard the sound of a 4 or 5-year-old crying from the grief of losing their father, it's the most hurtful thing to ever hear. When they ask, is Daddy coming back? Why did someone hurt my daddy? How do you explain that their father was brutally murdered and left dead in a park? How do you help them through this type of pain? How do you make sense of something out of so senselessness? You can't. As a mother, losing my son in such a horrific and tragic manner was devastating. I cried every day from 5 a.m. till 10 a.m. for 3 months straight. The sleepless nights I've had from nightmares of his last moments are beyond words. Curtis was 25 years old when his life was cut short. His family is left to try to somehow move forward. While we have stuck closely together to support one another as best we can, it's a struggle. We need the public's help to bring justice to all these victims' families. While it won't bring our loved ones back, it will bring a sense of closure for us all. Whoever is responsible needs to be held accountable for taking their lives of these 7 victims. Please, we urge you, if you know something, we need you to say something. No family should have to endure such pain and not receive closure. We pray that justice be served for these crimes that have been committed against our loved ones. Sincerely, Promise Marks, mother of Curtis D. Smith. We've also offered a reward of up to $15,000 for the shooting death of 28-year-old Angelo Mcdonald. At approximately 12:35 a.m. on June 11, 2020, Portland police officers responded to a report of gunfire at the 600 block of Northeast 162nd. When they arrived, they found Mr. McDonald deceased. Surveillance video recovered nearby shows Mr. McDonald walking up a flight of stairs with 2 associates when another individual runs up and then is seen running away holding something in his right hand. Based on the investigation to date, investigators believe that suspect to be a young man in his mid-20s, average height to 6 feet tall, with a thin frame, dark complexion, and possibly braided hair. The suspect was wearing a light, multicolored top jacket and a light-colored hat, and he was seen getting into a blue or gray Ford Crown Victoria sedan. D'Angelo's mother, Michelle Hanna, also lives out of town and has also provided a written statement that she would like read. It goes as follows. I would respectfully like to start this statement by saying my life has been completely turned upside down since June 11, 2020. That was the day my son, little D, was taken out of my life for something so senseless, by someone that had no regards and no care in the world, not ever thinking about how this would affect his mother, sisters, brother, and children. This has been trauma in all our lives. I sincerely beg anyone out there that knows anything about my son's murder, please speak up. Forget about this so-called street code. Please say something if you have heard anything or seen anything. If you say you cared about my son at all, please say something. D'Angelo, little D, has his family and true friends that love him and miss him beyond measure. Again, I beg and plead with anyone and everyone. If you know something, please say something. Thank you. Sincerely, little D's mother, sibling, and children. And finally, one last case to mention today, that of 23-year-old dolfagar Kareem Nasir. We have offered a reward also of up to $15,000 in this case as well. On December 11, 2020, 23-year-old dolfagar was working as an Uber driver. Shortly before midnight, he arrived in the area of Northeast Stafford Street and Northeast 11th Avenue to pick up a fare. He was shot by multiple subjects who fired approximately 70 rounds into his car. He died several days later. The subjects got into 2 cars before leaving. One of those cars is believed to be a VW EOS. Shell casings recovered at the scene have been matched to casings found at other gang-involved shootings in the area. So in the many meetings that we've had with community organizers, community groups that are so focused on helping to stop the gun violence in the city of Portland, we've heard one continual theme, and that is of the fear of retribution and retaliation for anybody that might come forward to law enforcement. And that's why we continue to try and partner wherever and whenever we can to help address those fears so that we can give people the courage to come forward to law enforcement. So hear this now. If you have any information about any of these cases that can help bring closure to any of these families, you need to step forward. If you have information and are fearful about retaliation or retribution, we would ask that you call Oregon Crime Stoppers. That's why we're here today with Oregon Crime Stoppers in partnership with them to make sure people understand if they want to submit tips anonymously, they absolutely can. And they can do so through Oregon Crime Stoppers. With us today, joining from Oregon Crime Stoppers, is Portland Police Bureau Sergeant Pete Simpson to explain how Oregon Crime Stoppers works and how people can submit some of those tips anonymously. Sergeant Simpson.
Good morning. I'm here representing Crime Stoppers of Oregon, a community-based organization that's been helping law enforcement solve cases for more than 40 years in Portland. Crime Stoppers works with law enforcement agencies to provide anonymous tips to solve cases. With these homicides, Crime Stoppers is proud to support the FBI's efforts to solve these cases and bring justice to these families. But we can't do it alone. Any tip that you have in the community, any piece of information that you have, a license plate, a vehicle description, a nickname, a rumor, all of it can be submitted to Crime Stoppers anonymously and will be forwarded to investigators for their review. No tip is too small. Each tip might lead to another tip, which might lead to another piece of information, which might lead to an arrest, which is what these cases need. We know there's fear in the community of retaliation. Especially in Portland, we've seen an unprecedented level of gun violence last year, and we hope not to repeat that this year. But it's time to step up. We know people have information. Investigators know people have information. These families know people have information. We need you to step forward. Crime Stoppers is truly anonymous. You go to crimestoppersoforegon.com. You could submit a tip online. If you download the P3 app for your phone, you can submit a tip through your phone. Crime Stoppers does not gather any data, does not gather any identifying information. We don't know who you are, and neither will law enforcement. If you want to call investigators, we do encourage that. FBI, Portland Police, Gresham Police, whomever it is, if you feel that you can step up and put your name on paper, please do that. But if you can't, consider Crime Stoppers as an option to submit tips and help these families get justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Simpson. Again, here in partnership with all of the agencies that represent the Metro Safe Streets Task Force, the Portland Police Bureau, the Gresham Police, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, the ATF, HSI, the U.S. Attorney's Office. We are trying to do anything and everything we can to help positively impact the safety and security of this community. But if you are fearful of retaliation, of retribution, because you have that piece of information, you have that license plate or any kind of information, you can feel free to contact Oregon Crime Stoppers or the FBI directly. Tell us about those fears. Let us address them. Let us get your information. Let us put that to good use to hold those people accountable that have taken all of these lives that you see before you today, and know that we will make sure that you are safe in doing so. We want to thank, again, the family members that have joined us and the friends. Again, this is incredibly difficult for them to continue to relive this pain, knowing that the killers of their loved ones are still walking around the streets. And we know if we hold those people accountable, that it will start to have a positive impact, and it will reduce gun violence in the community. Because those people that took these lives are still out there now. If we hold them accountable, others are going to take notice, and we're going to see a sea change in the security and the safety of our community. So thank you.